Well, for those who have jumped on the line, I want to say thank you and welcome. We do have a loop of presentation just briefing the plan showing at the moment. And feel free to jump on at any time and ask questions. And I know we have a few people watching on Facebook as well. And so we'll check those comments too if there's anything there if you're not able to get on the Zoom call. But we'll go ahead and let the presentation play through, and then we will jump forward on having some additional conversation. All right, and the presentation has looped once. I will go ahead and present the slides as they go around this next time, but please feel free at any time to jump in with any questions. And then we'll also go over, kind of where things are on our website and how you can look further into the process and the plan itself. So Destination 2045 is the Ozarks Transportation Organization's long-range transportation plan. The OTO, we are the regional planning, the metropolitan planning organization for the Springfield metropolitan region. So we cover portions of Greene and Christian County. So Springfield, Willard, Stratford, Republic, Battlefield, Ozark, and Nixa. And we just cover that kind of urbanized area around the core. And so we also are responsible for prioritizing the federal funds that come to the area and working with our communities so that we work together to have an integrative transportation system. And so the long-range transportation plan is part of how we do that. It's a 20-year planning horizon, but we update it every 5 years. We follow guidance from federal transportation law, and sorry, now that it's not on loop, let me pause that for a second. And part of the plan's purpose is to highlight the projects that the region can afford to construct through that planning timeframe. So in this case, through 2045, we project the funds out that we think we'll receive in the region through 2045 and estimate what projects can be completed in that timeframe. And then on top of that, we develop strategies for the next 5 years for the OTO for our planning purposes and what we'll focus on that'll kind of help us move towards that end goal of 2045 and what our transportation system will look like. So our planning process kind of is a series of steps: engagement, assessment, analysis, and then outreach and adoption, which is where we are now. So the engagement portion, we document our current and future conditions and do our public outreach. So during 2020, we did some visioning workshops. We had a survey. We did outreach through Facebook and Twitter and tried to reach all of the channels. And we know that COVID-19, really put a different spin on how we went about that public outreach, but we still thought we did try to reach out to all the different groups and have things available through the libraries and our website and a lot of different avenues there. And so on the assessment side, we look at our system performance, which is of the transportation system, and this feeds into our project prioritization process as well. We review all the existing policies that are in place and what things that are and aren't working. We identify the funding that will be available and how that projects out through 2045. And then we also gather needs. So we use all of that public input and then also working with our member jurisdictions, our communities, to gather the things that they've identified as potential projects. And then that analysis phase is the prioritization process. And I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But we have a data-driven process that looks at kind of a whole host of factors to compare projects against each other. And then what we call fiscal constraint. We have to estimate how much those projects will cost, and then an inflation factor is applied depending on when we think those projects will be constructed. And then we develop recommendations from that and an implementation plan. And then this public outreach phase, we are trying to gather input from the public to see if we are headed in the right direction, if we've captured all of the right things. And the board will consider the plan for adoption on September 16th at their board meeting. So that engagement process involved those visioning workshops I spoke of, our survey. We have a website where we posted all of our meetings that were also live. We broadcast via Facebook for our meetings and monitor comments during that time frame as well. And so just have a few highlights from some of those events. Our visioning workshop we did with our board of directors and our technical planning committee. And one of the questions we asked is, what do you think the transportation system will look like in 2045? And so these are some word cloud results from that exercise. We have a variety of things that are forward-looking, honestly. So automated, electric, self-driving, those are some things that pop up, but also having education, an effective system, an efficient system, connectivity. Some still think it'll be congested, and intelligent transportation system. So there's a lot of things to kind of think about when you're looking at over 20 years in the future. So this is a question from the survey that we sent out, and with no obstacles, what should we accomplish by 2045? And so the one that received the most votes on that are have trails, a connected and regional trail system, more complete streets, and that was second. And so, definitely looking at having multiple ways to get, get around the region. And so the goals that we developed for the plan, we developed 5 goals, and tried to take all of the input that we received into account, as well as the requirements that we need to meet for this long-range transportation plan. And so goal 1 is safe for all users on all modes. Goal 2, asset management and fiscal responsibility. 3, connected, integrated, multimodal system. 4, resilient and prepared for the future. And this one I like to comment that prepared for the future means, looking at some of those future technologies that we may not be aware of, but also being ready to react to different funding availability, changes up at the federal level that impact, what we do here. And so really just having a good basis for, the things that are to come. And then 5, quality projects implementing best practices. So a big portion of the plan is this investment plan, where we show our fiscal constraint and select the projects that we can afford. And I'd like to point out, this is not necessarily all of the funding that we capture in the plan itself, but to show that the funding that MoDOT gets statewide, and we talk a lot about federal funding coming to the state. If you're familiar with federal projects, a lot of times they are 80% federal and 20% local. And so it sounds like a lot of federal revenue goes towards our transportation system. But in reality, a large chunk of it is sourced from the state itself. And so we have our fuel taxes, and we did just have a fuel tax increase pass that'll take about 5 years to implement, but we'll start to see that revenue as well. The Missouri vehicle sales tax, registration and licensing fees, a little bit from general revenue, and then bond proceeds and some additional funding that just comes through some other sources. So a majority of our funding does come from the statewide level for MoDOT. This is the prioritization process I mentioned earlier. And so we look at different factors and kind of score how all of the projects rank against each other. One thing to note is that these are not all or nothing points. There is a scale, and in the plan itself, we do go into some detail in an appendix. We call it the prioritization glossary, but we do go through how projects receive these scores. And for example, safety looks at both fatal and injury crashes. Bike ped safety is a tiered score based on the number of crashes at a project location. Are we removing an at-grade railroad crossing? Does the project connect different modes? Environmental justice looks at, is that project in an area where we're supporting low income or minority populations? We look at current congestion and future congestion as well, based on our projections for employment and population and traffic demands on the system. We do look at the statewide freight plan, which is a MoDOT freight plan, indicating which roads have importance to the freight system. Part of this plan is looking at how we move goods and people. And then, what percentage of the traffic is freight, looking at bridge condition. And then this is something for extending life cycle. This is something that we don't always think about. We definitely know that a lot of our transportation system needs to be maintained, needs improvements in that regard. But a lot of times projects where we are enhancing the system go ahead and improve existing roadway conditions. So if a project was able to do that, we awarded points. And then local priority gave an opportunity for each of our member jurisdictions to just kind of indicate what they thought was really important based on their own planning processes. And so with that prioritization process, I will add that some projects just need to have a discussion as well. So if we have projects that are new, or the roadway doesn't have any data associated with it, we have to have a conversation about where we think that falls in line with everything else. But what we do end up with is this constrained list of projects. And for example, so this top table shows our projections. So MoDOT directed revenue, we do look at getting some cost shares to the area. We have some sub-allocated funding that by formula we get from the federal government on that, and then local funding required to match all those projects. And so we also take into account projects that are already planned for construction in our transportation improvement program, and in addition to the projects that we prioritize for funding in this plan. And so when we put all that together, we came up with a list of projects that equals about $1.8 billion. And we do try to leave a little bit of funding on the table in case we have other projects we haven't considered at this point in time. Sometimes situations change. And so we've got a little bit of funding left just to be flexible in the future. And so a similar process is taken for transit. And there is some federal funding that is directly received to city utilities, and then some funding that they apply for as well for operations and maintenance of the transit system and replacement of vehicles. And there is a local share for that. And when we talk about a lot of projects, I mentioned the 80-20 funding split. Majority of the transit system in Springfield is actually funded by city utilities and not through that federal funding. So that's important to note as well. And then there's just some additional funding for specific programs through the state of Missouri and Medicaid. And then we do have some vehicles that we work with local human service agencies to receive. And so that funding is captured there. And kind of the same thing, we look at what we can afford through 2045. We take into account projects that are already in consideration. We have a few dollars left at the end of the day. And so some of those major constrained projects, and I really hope you get a chance to look at our interactive website. You can zoom in and click and get details on each of these. But looking at capacity expansion on I-44, adding some lanes, making room, especially when there's crashes, and having additional room to maneuver traffic through those and creating a safer situation. Improving Kansas Expressway through Springfield, finishing the Kansas extension south of Springfield, expanding capacity on US 65 in Christian County, working on converting US 60 to a freeway east of town, MM in ZZ and 60 and that whole kind of area in Republic, working on improving all of that connection and with the railroad, improving Route 14, US 160 and Route CC in Christian County. And ITS is important as well to maintaining a good flow of our traffic. ITS is Intelligent Transportation Systems, and it's what communicates all of our lights together, our message boards, providing information back on what's functioning and not functioning throughout the day. And so that covers that. And then we have a lot of projects as well that maybe don't have a specific location, but we wanted to make sure we had funding available for them. But ADA improvements, trails, bicycle and pedestrian improvements, such as our sidewalks, and really beefing up that part of our system, signal replacement program, bridge asset management, pavement improvements on our major and minor routes, operations and maintenance is just all that daily stuff like potholes and mowing, rail projects, and then also scoping so that we can spend time designing and planning what a project needs to look like. And then I mentioned those projects already in our transportation improvement program. So then on the transit side, with the funding that is available, it's really maintaining the system as it is. funding the operating and preventative maintenance, planning and security of the system, some ADA enhancements as well to improve that portion of the transit system, bus replacements, and in this case, we are still looking at continuing to build on the electric buses that City Utilities has received. They have 2 that are they're preparing right now to put, get ready and put into service. And so hopefully we'll be able to continue that if they work well. And then ITS on the transit side also. So here is a map of the constrained projects, and the different colors on the projects just indicate about the time frame when we think we'd be able to address those particular needs. And again, if you can get into our interactive site, and I'll put a link in the chat here shortly on that, but you'll be able to click in and really get some additional details on the projects. At the same time, we have a fair number of projects we are not able to afford between now and 2045. We call these our unfunded needs. There's just more to the system and what's going to be needed between now and then than we can account for currently. And on the transit side as well, continuing that bus electrification, the potential for trolley service. I know this comes up when we talk about tourism and placemaking, along with the placemaking shelters, which would really be an upgraded look to what we have now in certain locations. And so what can we do to take transit to the next step? In 2012, OTO conducted a route study that looked at various levels of service additions, both in location and frequency, and then also looking at a limited stop circulator. And so we have some pricing associated with those as well, and they are currently on that unconstrained list. So implementation, we have a couple of things here. And so one is our major thoroughfare plan. And this really outlines the vision for the various roadways throughout the region and accounting for how we think they will be able to serve us in the future. So they may not meet those existing classifications now, but in the future, we want to make sure that we are, planning and accounting for the future build out. And so our last plan, we actually made over 300 modifications. It had really just was a time to revisit a lot of the different changes. We've made a few amendments since then. And so we don't have many changes proposed at this point in time. A few fixes based on what is now being reviewed as the solution for that MM and 60 and ZZ connection. And then a few other collector changes. So when we talk about our classifications, freeway, that's our what we think of as I-44 and 60. Our expressways are, 60 leaving town as Sunshine, Kansas Expressway, West Bypass. Primary arterials would be like Glenstone, Campbell, our major streets that way. And secondary arterials are kind of those, through connectors, carry a little bit more traffic. Whereas our collectors are what gather all of the local traffic and help get them into the rest of the system. And so, again, these are just some of the minor changes that we're making, but what we're proposing to do as part of our implementation and our planning strategies that I mentioned over the next 5 years is really take a look at the design standards we have associated with these classifications and how we can broaden them to consider or better consider the surrounding land use. As we know, roads going through different sections of the region encounter different situations regarding land use and the buildings around them. And so finding a way where we can be flexible and promote more complete streets and better bicycle and pedestrian and transit connections as well, and rather than just having a hard, fast rule for every roadway. So that is something that we'll be further exploring over the next 5 years. So public outreach, that's where we are now. I'll put a few of these links in the chat here in a moment, but we've got our website, ozarkstransportation.org. And if you click on what we do in Destination 2045, you can find the link to our survey and immersive experience. You can find more input events and opportunities for public comment relating to the plan. And if you scroll down a little bit, you can actually see all of the meeting videos for the planning process. And then this is just a screenshot of that immersive experience. You can click to view the full draft plan, a direct link to the survey, though it is embedded further down on the page, and you'll have that opportunity for the interactive map as well. So I'm just going to hit pause there, and that's kind of the brief presentation we wanted to be able to make about the plan and provide an opportunity for any comments or feedback from there. And Sarah, is there anything you want to add about the plan or the planning process as well? All right, thank you. Okay, and I will work on getting some of those links into the chat for you. So the first link is our Destination 2045 webpage. And then the second link will be that immersive experience that I referenced. And let me just hop over and see if we have any feedback on our Facebook page as well. Does not appear that we do.
You might put those links up in the Facebook as well.
Okay, yeah, it's a great idea.
Natasha, I don't know if you see the chat.
Okay, can you show the new roads that are currently funded and scheduled to begin in the next few years? So sure, let me actually just share a different screen for a moment. And I will show you how to look at our transportation improvement program on our website. So we kind of have a series of plans that we produce here at the OTO. The first is that long range transportation plan, and that sets the tone for all the other work that we do. It's long range, like I mentioned, going through 2045, but then we have what we also call the Transportation Improvement Program. And that is a 5-year, construction schedule in coordination with MoDOT's statewide Transportation Improvement Program, otherwise known as the STIP. And so if you go to our website and click on what we do and click on the Transportation Improvement Program, we have actually the newest one that we just approved this July listed here, and this is what we reference in Destination 2045. And so this goes through all of the various projects and that we plan over, and in this case for the TIP it's 4 years, and for the STIP it is 5 years. And let me see if I can actually get us a better view of this. And so we also have an interactive TIP website, and you can click into the map viewer, and that is accessible. Let me just go back here real quick. That is accessible from this TIP webpage as well, View Interactive TIP tool. And so, you know, it's a combination of asset management. So you'll see a lot of resurfacing type projects in here. We do also include those projects that would be ADA upgrades. And so one of the things that we're required to do is when we go and resurface a roadway, we're required to go ahead and also look at the curb ramps and the pedestrian crossings and those sorts of things along that same corridor. And so you'll see a lot of those types of projects partnered up. We have, for example, Glenstone pavement resurfacing. Sometimes you'll see a project and it'll just say scoping. So like I-44 bridge scoping, scoping for I-44 roadway improvements. That means that we're still looking at what that potential solution might be, but we know that we have a need that needs to be addressed. And so a lot of times in the next tip, you'll see that that pops up maybe for construction if we can find a funding source for that. Sarah did respond in the chat too, if there is something specific that you know, anyone's interested in, and we can zoom in on that area or that project as well. Just want to be able to we'll check our Facebook here also. Make sure we capture all of our comments. Okay. And then, you know, once you see that project pop up, you can kind of click on it, it'll zoom in. If you select the project, you can see, you know, the details, you know, what it's going to cost and what the funding source is. Okay, so 60 west of Springfield. Okay, so, you know, right now we're looking, there are some railroad improvements that are expected through there. There is some scoping for improvements, so we don't necessarily have a solution identified, but for taking that to what would be about Farm Road 184 on the west side of Republic. And then part of the challenge, and we do try to coordinate with the Southwest Missouri Council of Governments, but our boundary really doesn't take us much further beyond, you know, that kind of western location of 60 and the county line road. And so I know that Southwest Missouri Council of Governments, they work with the rural transportation planning side in coordination with MoDOT, and that 60-37 corridor is you know, something that they have on their priority list as well. Sarah, are you aware of anything that's under consideration that direction at this moment in time?
So right now we are working on our priorities for the upcoming statewide transportation improvement program, which will be for a year from now, the ability to add projects for improvement. So 60 west of Springfield right now, we are In the top 10 projects we're recommending, it looks like it will be to 6-lane from James River Freeway all the way to 174. So we will be recommending that, as well as intersection improvements through the city limits there, through that 5-lane section of Republic. We don't have any funding estimates available yet, but that is in our top 10 projects. So tune in for a year from now. We'll have more information if any or either of those projects will be funded.
I have a quick question. If
Yeah.
you're free. Extending FF South from Battlefield, there's some kind of vague, I'm not sure how much of that is encompasses your area and what goes to, because I see that's below the county line as well. Could you tell me, do you have any plans before 20 years from now following FF South more?
Sarah, I'm going to pull up the kind of our base map, and let me actually kind of show you guys how you can get to this as well from our website. And so if you go under our resources and click on maps, you can go to the OTO area base map, and this will also give everyone watching an opportunity to look at our boundaries as well and how they relate to the rest of the region. And so, Sarah, do you want to touch on that FF south of Battlefield? Oh, I think you're muted, Sarah.
Right now, we do have a line on the map extending FF beyond the city of Battlefield. There's a couple of things happening there. One, the city of Battlefield is interested in really understanding how FF can function in the future. And so we will be beginning a study here probably in the next 3 to 6 months to look at what that should look like through the town, because, you know, FF is their main road and it really affects the character of that city. So, you know, one of the questions we want answered is, should that look like an expressway through town, or should that have some lower speeds, possibly some roundabouts, sidewalks, maybe a trail, what that'll look like. And so depending on the outcome of that study, we're going to need to come back around and decide on the continuation of FF and what that should look like in the future. So the long story, go ahead.
I'm actually, and I agree with that, because there's so many people that take FF to get to Nixa and Clever and those cities slightly farther west and south. If you could scroll down farther south on the map just a little bit, instead of the road where it takes a dot, and then when it crosses the James River, there's that really kind of like right in the middle of nowhere. That's where our house is and our community is, right just south kind of the James River there. So I'm wondering how many, how accurate that, what is that dotted line? What do you classify that or characterize that as?
So once upon a time, we did a study and we're foreseeing the need for additional connections from Springfield to Ozark. Or I mean, from Nixa to Springfield, from Christian County to Greene County. And the idea was to provide several different connections, one of which being the extension of FF, another being the Kansas Expressway extension that we're all very familiar with. Over time, it's become very apparent that Christian County lacks the resources to build those new roads extending into Christian County. So the original idea was that Kansas would curve west and FF would curve east, and it would come down as one line. And so what happened over time is sort of a long story. Kansas was moved onto the Nicholas Road alignment, and FF alignment was not changed. And so because we have not preserved that right of way for that FF extension, I do not foresee that line coming to fruition, at least at that current location. So after we get through this study with Battlefield to decide what FF should look like through the city of Battlefield, we're gonna have to come back and look at that line's location as it goes into Christian County. So I would say, I would almost guarantee 99% that that alignment will not work. As you know, it's going through some new subdivisions that were allowed to plat, and that corridor was not preserved. So I would not be terribly concerned that that line will come to fruition, because one, it's a problematic alignment. We haven't preserved the right of way, and two, there's no funding, and the county does not have the resources to fund that. So that is probably on our list for probably 2 years from now to look at, well, what alternatives should be available and to relocate that line.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, are there any additional questions or comments or anything else we can, dig further into for you?
If you're asking me specifically, I think I'm
Oh,
all set. Thank you.
okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, you or anyone.
Open. Yeah, no, it looks great. I just wasn't real clear. That line wasn't at the last meeting 5 years ago, or at least I don't remember it being there. So I wondered if that was something that just popped up. Thank you very much for your help, both of you.
Thanks for asking the question. And so one additional thing that I will point out, it wasn't necessarily part of the plan that we're getting ready to adopt. It came a little bit in advance, but over the last several years, OTO has really been ramping up our trail planning efforts and how we can create that connected trail system throughout our region. And one thing that our board just adopted at the at its July board meeting is the Towards a Regional Trail System. And so this builds on a project we did a few years before, where we looked at all the various proposed trails throughout the area and what barriers or what realignments we needed to address and what they would cost to implement. And it came up with it was, I think, around 80-ish miles of trail and 120 some million dollars worth of projects. And so we wanted to develop a strategy for how we can put that plan into action and really focus on those key connections between each of our communities. And so you can find this plan on our website, also under our resources, plans, reports, and studies, and then under bicycle and pedestrian. And so it's called Towards the Regional Trail System, and it outlines some strategies for moving forward and trying to really have an investment plan and a prioritization strategy for projects.
Good. How are you?
Oh, Derek, I think you're not muted. There we go. Thanks. And so this is something that, if you're interested in trails in the region as well, this would be a great supplement to the plan. We do reference it in the plan and, talk about the strategies that it recommends. So that's just another great resource as we dig into how do we do that. Some other great resources on our website while you're there, I'll just show. We have some different toolboxes, and this can be for the active citizen as well as any community, but one is our Complete Streets toolbox, and this is one where it can be fun to play around with some features as well for your street or a nearby street in your neighborhood. If you're a neighborhood organization wants to be able to communicate some things you'd like to see. So we have a couple of links. One's called Street Mix and the other one's called Street Plan. And you can actually kind of, build in the features that you'd like to see. So it's a great, easy visual tool you can use to communicate, kind of your desired transportation improvements with your community officials as well. Let's see. I don't know if we have any new people on the line. I think most of you were here for the presentation. So I am going to go ahead and hit play and let that loop again. But if there's anything that we can address, please let us know, or any other questions. We'll probably at this point just kind of see, who else comes on the line, and if there's additional questions we can address.
Kathleen, since it is just you, if you had any questions, we'd be happy to discuss anything on your mind.
Oh, how funny. Well, I really was just kind of listening in on this. I live west of Republic, like toward the Aurora Monette area. And so my big questions were how there might be any type of improvements to better that corridor for commuters, because it seems like so much of what happens is to Nixa, Ozark, Rogersville, not the west corridor, at least west of Republic. So, which it sounds like that's out of your all scope.
Yeah, it really is. I know it's been a top priority though for our neighboring planning organization, and it's on the radar. I think it'll be interesting to see with the new fuel tax if that might be a corridor that gets some funding, but I do know it's on lots of people's minds.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all that I was really curious about because that's what affects me.
Really. Thanks for coming.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.